New York City is, a place of immense energy and constant motion. It's a city of towering skyscrapers, bustling streets, and a population drawn from every corner of the globe. Its position as a global center for finance, culture, and diplomacy is undeniable. But to truly understand how it became this extraordinary metropolis, we really have to look beyond the concrete and steel. We need to look at its geography. The city is built upon a collection of islands and a piece of the mainland, all surrounding one of the world's most magnificent natural harbors. This harbor provided a safe haven for ships, a gateway to the vast interior of the North American continent, and honestly, the very reason for the city's existence. The heart of it all is the island of Manhattan. This long, narrow strip of land, flanked by the Hudson and East Rivers, was destined for greatness. Its deep water port offered protection from the harsh Atlantic Ocean, yet provided easy access to it. The Hudson River, stretching deep into the mainland, was a natural highway for trade and exploration. This unique geographical advantage was not lost on those who first saw it. It was a strategic location that promised opportunity, wealth, and influence. The story of New York is, in many ways, the story of this specific piece of land and how its natural gifts were harnessed, for better or for worse, by the people who came to call it home. Before the glass towers and the yellow cabs, before the subways rumbled beneath the ground, this place was a very different world. It was a landscape of rolling hills, dense forests, and marshlands teeming with life. The air was clean, the rivers were full of fish, and the land provided everything needed to sustain a community. It's a world that's almost impossible to imagine now, standing in the middle of Times Square. Yet, the foundations of the modern city are built directly upon this ancient land. The paths that are now famous avenues were once simple trails, and the desire to control this uniquely positioned island has driven much of its dramatic and often turbulent history. The journey of New York from a quiet, natural paradise to a bustling global hub is a story of ambition, conflict, and transformation. It's a narrative shaped by the people who lived here first, the explorers who stumbled upon its shores, the colonists who laid its first streets, and the countless immigrants who arrived seeking a new life. Every layer of the city's history contributes to its complex identity. To understand New York, you have to understand where it came from. You have to go back to the beginning, to a time when the island had a different name and its future was an unwritten page, waiting for the first chapter to begin. Long before Europeans ever dreamed of a new world, the land we now call New York was home to a sophisticated and well-established people. They were the Lenape, and they called the island Manhattan, which is often translated as Island of Many Hills. For thousands of years, they lived in harmony with the environment, creating a thriving society based on a deep understanding of the natural world. Their villages were scattered throughout the area, from the coasts of what is now Brooklyn and Queens, to the forests of the Bronx, and the hilly terrain of Manhattan. They were not just surviving here, they were flourishing in a land of incredible abundance. The Lenape were skilled hunters, farmers, and fishermen. They cultivated crops like corn, beans, and squash, a combination known as the Three Sisters, which provided a balanced and sustainable diet. They hunted deer, turkey, and other game in the dense forests, and they fished for sturgeon, oysters, and clams in the clean, clear waters of the rivers and bay. Their lives were governed by the changing of the seasons, each one bringing different tasks and different opportunities. They built longhouses from wood and bark to shelter their families, and created intricate tools from stone and bone. Their society was organized and their connection to the land was profound and spiritual. Life for the Lenape was structured around community and family, with a deep respect for their elders and a strong sense of collective responsibility. They had complex social and political systems, with different clans and leaders who made decisions for the good of the group. They passed down their history, their beliefs, and their knowledge through oral traditions, telling stories that explained the creation of the world and their place within it. They saw the land not as something to be owned or conquered, but as a living entity to be shared and cared for. This worldview would soon clash dramatically with the very different ideas brought by newcomers from across the sea. Their existence was peaceful and sustainable. The population was small enough that the environment could easily support them without being depleted. They moved their settlements periodically to allow the land to recover, a practice that showed their foresight and respect for nature's cycles. They created paths through the forests that followed the natural contours of the land, some of which, remarkably, laid the groundwork for the streets and avenues of the future city. The world of the Lenape and Manhattan was a complete and vibrant one. a rich tapestry of culture and nature that existed for centuries before the first European sails appeared on the horizon, signaling an irreversible change. The year 1524 marked a pivotal moment in the history of Manhattan. For the first time, the Lenape witnessed a sight that must have been both astonishing and frightening: a large European ship sailing into their bay. On board was the Italian explorer Giovanni da Verrazzano, who was sailing under the flag of the French king Francis I. His mission was to find a northwest passage to Asia, a direct sea route for the lucrative spice trade. He did not find that passage, but he did find what he described as a very agreeable situation located by a great river. He had sailed into what is now New York Harbor, becoming the first European to document its existence. Verrazzano and his crew did not stay for long. They briefly anchored, made contact with the curious Lenape who paddled out in canoes to greet them, and then continued their journey northward. He named the area Nouvelle Angoulême in honor of his French patron, but the name did not stick. Although his visit was fleeting, it was incredibly significant. Verrazzano's report, once it reached Europe, put this magnificent harbor on the map. He described the vast potential of the land and the strategic importance of the river. He had opened a door, and though it would be some time before others walked through it, the discovery had been made. The isolation of Manhattan was over. After Verrazzano's voyage, nearly a century passed with little European activity in the region. Other parts of the Americas were being colonized by the Spanish and Portuguese, but this particular stretch of coastline remained largely untouched. The Lenape continued their lives as they had for generations, perhaps sharing stories of the strange, large canoe and the pale-skinned men who had briefly visited their shores. But in Europe, the gears of exploration and commerce were turning. Nations were competing for wealth and power, and the idea of a new world full of resources was a powerful motivator. The information from Verrazzano's journey had not been forgotten. The next major chapter in the story of European arrival would be written not by the French, but by the Dutch. By the early 1600s, the Netherlands had become a dominant force in global trade, with its powerful Dutch East India Company and Dutch West India Company seeking new markets and new routes. The quest for a passage to Asia was still very much alive, and the reports of a great river in North America were of great interest. The stage was set for another explorer, this time an Englishman in the service of the Dutch, to sail into the harbor and up the river that would one day bear his name, an expedition that would change the destiny of the island forever. In 1609, the Dutch East India Company hired an experienced English navigator named Henry Hudson. His mission, just like Verrazzano's before him, was to find a northern sea route to Asia. After a failed attempt to sail north of Russia, Hudson turned his ship, the Halve Maan, also known as the Half Moon, westwards across the Atlantic. He was actually following a tip from his friend, Captain John Smith of the Jamestown colony, about a possible passage through the North American continent. In September of that year, Hudson sailed into the same magnificent harbor that Verrazzano had described. He had arrived at the mouth of the river that would soon become his namesake. Convinced that this great river might be the channel he was looking for, Hudson sailed upstream. For more than 2 weeks he journeyed north, his small ship navigating the deep waters of what the Lenape called the Mahicantuck. He traveled as far as present-day Albany, trading with the various Native American communities he encountered along the way. They exchanged European goods like tools and beads for valuable furs, especially beaver pelts, which were highly fashionable and profitable in Europe. Hudson soon realized that the river was narrowing and was not a passage to the Pacific, but he had discovered something else of immense value. The discovery was not a route to Asia, but a gateway to the rich, fur-trapping lands of the interior. When Hudson returned to Europe with his report and a cargo of valuable furs, he created a sensation among Dutch merchants. They were less interested in colonization and more interested in commerce. They immediately saw the potential for a hugely profitable trading operation. The Dutch government granted merchants the right to trade in this new territory, and soon, Dutch ships began to make regular trips to Hudson's River. They were not looking to build a new society, they were looking to do business. These early Dutch ventures were focused solely on trade. Small temporary trading posts were established along the river, most notably near modern-day Albany, where Fort Nassau was built in 1614. These outposts were simple structures designed to facilitate the fur trade with Native American trappers, primarily the Mohawk and Mohican peoples. The Dutch traders would arrive, exchange their goods for furs, and then sail back to the Netherlands. For several years, this was the extent of the Dutch presence. But as the trade grew more lucrative, the idea of a permanent settlement to protect and manage their interests began to take hold. A small trading operation was about to become a colony. By 1624, the newly formed Dutch West India Company decided that a permanent settlement was necessary to secure their lucrative fur trade. They sent about 30 families, mostly French-speaking Walloons, to establish a presence in the territory they now called New Netherland. While some were sent upriver to the Hudson Valley, and others to the Delaware and Connecticut rivers, a small group began to build a settlement on the southern tip of Manhattan Island. This fledgling outpost, really little more than a collection of simple wooden huts and a fort, was the beginning of a town that they would call New Amsterdam. Its position at the mouth of the river made it the perfect spot to control all trade flowing in and out. One of the most famous events in the city's early history occurred in 1626. The director of the New Netherland colony, Peter Minuit, formally purchased the island of Manhattan from a group of Lenape. The story, often told, is that he bought it for 60 Dutch guilders, the equivalent of a handful of trinkets. While the transaction did happen, the reality is a bit more complex. The Dutch and the Lenape had fundamentally different ideas about land ownership. The Dutch believed they were making a final purchase for exclusive use, while the Lenape likely saw the payment as a gift to share the land, not to sell it forever. This cultural misunderstanding would be a source of conflict for years to come. With the land secured in their minds, the Dutch began to build a proper town. A more substantial fort, Fort Amsterdam, was constructed at the island's southernmost point to protect the harbor. Inside and around the fort, a small community started to take shape. A grid of streets was laid out, houses were built in the Dutch style with steep gabled roofs, and a windmill was erected to grind grain. A church, a tavern, and a market were established. Although it was a commercial enterprise at its core, New Amsterdam was slowly becoming a real town. A small piece of the Netherlands transplanted to the shores of North America, complete with canals and gardens. The colony grew slowly but steadily. Its primary purpose remained business. The docks of New Amsterdam were busy with ships arriving from Europe with supplies and colonists, and departing with holds full of beaver pelts, timber, and tobacco. The town was diverse from its very beginning. The Dutch West India Company was more concerned with attracting hard-working settlers than with their nationality or religion. As a result, New Amsterdam became a melting pot of Dutch, Walloons, French, Germans, Scandinavians, and, tragically, some of the first enslaved Africans, who were brought to the colony to provide forced labor. This diversity would become a defining characteristic of the city for centuries to come. Life in New Amsterdam was not easy. The colony faced numerous challenges, from internal disputes to external threats. Leadership was often a significant problem. The directors general appointed by the Dutch West India Company often ruled with an iron fist, caring more about the company's profits than the well-being of the colonists. One of the most notorious leaders was Willem Kieft, whose aggressive and violent policies towards the local Lenape tribes led to a devastating conflict known as Kieft's War in the 1640s. This brutal war resulted in the deaths of hundreds of colonists and thousands of Native Americans, destabilizing the entire region and nearly destroying the young colony. Following the disaster of Kieft's War, the company sent a new director general to restore order, Peter Stuyvesant. He was a stern, authoritarian figure with a wooden leg, and he ruled New Amsterdam from 1647 until the end of Dutch rule. Stuyvesant was an effective administrator who brought much-needed stability. He improved the city's defenses, organized public works, and cracked down on smuggling. However, he was also deeply intolerant. A devout member of the Dutch Reformed Church, he tried to ban other religions, persecuting Lutherans, Quakers, and Jews who sought refuge in the diverse port town. His intolerance was often at odds with the commercial pragmatism of the city's merchants. Despite Stuyvesant's religious rigidity, the colonists themselves pushed for more rights and a voice in their own governance. In 1653, they successfully petitioned for a municipal charter, officially making New Amsterdam a city with its own court and local officials. This was a crucial step in its development from a company town to a self-governing community. The residents, a mix of traders, artisans, and farmers, were developing a unique identity. They were pragmatic, commercially minded, and increasingly independent. They were building a life in a new land and wanted a say in how it was run, often clashing with Stuyvesant's top-down approach. Meanwhile, a larger, colonial power was watching New Netherland with growing interest. The English, who had colonies to the north in New England and to the south in Virginia, saw the Dutch territory as an inconvenient wedge separating their possessions. They also coveted the magnificent harbor and the profitable trade routes it controlled. The political tensions between England and the Netherlands in Europe were spilling over into the Americas. New Amsterdam, despite its growing stability under Stuyvesant, was a small outpost of a distant trading empire. Its days under the Dutch flag were numbered, as a new power prepared to seize control. The end of Dutch rule came swiftly, and without a fight. In August 1664, a fleet of English warships sailed into the harbor and demanded the surrender of New Amsterdam. Peter Stuyvesant wanted to resist, but the city's defenses were weak, and its citizens were just not willing to face a destructive battle. They were merchants, not soldiers, and they knew that their livelihoods depended on peaceful trade. They persuaded Stuyvesant to capitulate. The colony of New Netherland was handed over to the English, and the city of New Amsterdam was immediately renamed New York, in honor of the king's brother, the Duke of York, to whom the land had been granted. The transition to English rule was remarkably smooth. The English were wise enough not to disrupt the city's thriving commercial life. They guaranteed the residents' property rights, religious freedom, and the continuation of their existing trade practices. For the average citizen, life did not change dramatically overnight. Dutch families continued to live alongside English newcomers, and the city's character, as a diverse, business-focused port, remained intact. This ability to absorb a new culture and new leadership without losing its fundamental identity was an early sign of the city's incredible resilience. New York was already learning how to adapt and evolve, a trait that would define its future. From this point forward, New York's story is one of relentless growth and constant change. It became a key British colonial city, played a strategic role in the American Revolution, and served as the first capital of the United States. In the 19th and 20th centuries, it became the primary gateway for millions of immigrants seeking a new life in America, each group adding another layer to its cultural fabric. It grew upwards with skyscrapers, and outwards into its 5 boroughs driven by waves of innovation, ambition, and the sheer energy of its people. The small Dutch trading post was transformed over and over again into the metropolis we know today. The journey from Manhattan to modern New York is a powerful narrative of transformation. It is the story of how a place, blessed with extraordinary geography, was shaped by the competing visions of the people who came to it. The Lenape's harmony with nature gave way to the Dutch focus on commerce, which in turn was absorbed by English colonial ambition and later fueled by American ideals of opportunity. Through it all, New York has never stopped changing. Its ability to reinvent itself, to welcome new people and new ideas, and to constantly build upon its own past is the very essence of its character. That is what turned a small island outpost into the greatest city in the world.